Okay. What any plans where you're going to be when you move back? Are you London or outside London? Or what's the?
Uh, Between London and Manchester. Hopefully more London than Manchester.
Okay. All right. That's a bit of a gap.
You can come and get a house near me then, because I'm
Yeah.
in Northamptonshire. I'm about
There you
80
go.
miles north of London. So
You can
Okay.
both appear on the same camera on Cloud State of Play next time. That'll save my bandwidth so much. Believe me.
that'll get the tongues wagging as well. What are these two up to?
Rrr.
What
Say no more.
business to
Say no more. Say no more.
Behave yourselves.
Hello and welcome. My name is Richard Simon. I am Cloud Therapist. I sound a little bit like Tony Stark from Marvel Comics when I say that. What does that sound like? I'm from Marvel Comics. I am Iron Man. I am Cloud Therapist. I think it's the that I'm taking out of that that's kind of making it sound funny, but purely unintentional. Anyway, this is the Christmas 2025 special episode of Cloud State of Play. We are going to be doing a review of the year in this episode. We started this trend last year, I think. Paul, did we not? Where
Yep.
we split the review of the year from the December episode, mainly because Paul and I have just got so much more to rant on about in the December episode. So we thought we'll kind of do the review of the year separately. I guess it also kind of gives us a chance to really kind of bring in some guests as well into Cloud State of Play, which is always great, always a good idea. Anyway, so we're kind of got a great lineup again of topics for you, as well as guests, of course, lots of stories to go through. But before we do that, I'm going to let my guests actually do an intro for themselves. Again, breaking from traditional Cloud State of Play, but let's go with that. So, ladies first. Sarah, can you kick us off, please?
Yeah, of course. I don't know how much I am actually a guest anymore these days, but I feel like we've done quite a few of these recently, or this year even, which
We
has been
have.
so much fun. Especially the live action one in Covent Garden.
Oh, yes. Check that out on the channel, by the way, guys. That is a good one. This is a DevOps modernization.
Anyway, my name's Sarah. I am a transformational CTO. I work largely with companies who are in the scaling process or some sort of change process to help them, set new processes, make sure the foundation's there, and start working towards some new innovation.
Fantastic. Paul?
Hi, everybody. I'm Paul Bevan. I've been in the industry for more years than I care to mention. And I've been trying to retire for a long time. And I think a lot of my retired, not retired, if you ever watch my, see my LinkedIn profile, it's down to Richard, because he was going, well, you still got to come and do these CSOPs things. And actually, I thoroughly enjoy it. And, your brain never really switches off. So I've been, on the sales and marketing side, I've been an analyst. I sometimes feel a little bit like a poacher turned gamekeeper when you go from being a sales and marketing specialist to an analyst, but always, pretty much always in the IT space. So I go back into mainframes and things like that, which Richard sort of yawns gently at, But there, good to speak.
Fantastic. Well, welcome to you both. And yeah, I think it's my fault if you still keep seeing Paul on here. It's purely my fault for keeping him in these episodes and not allowing him to retire. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, Paul. We'll find out. So see how he gets on. Okay. All right. So let's go on to our categories. Now, we do have categories, believe it or not, for this one. It's not a kind of off the cuff and unscripted. We have some categories that we go through. If you want to check out what the categories are, look in the description of the video, of course. I'll run through them in a minute. And we did that actually last year as well for the Christmas special that we had for last year. But anyway, we have a number of categories, so let's actually go through those now. So M&A, or mergers and acquisitions, that's the first one. We're going to all kind of mention what we felt were interesting M&As and things like that for this year. And number two is major cloud outages. I don't think we're short of those this year, so plenty to mention. The aspect we'll be parking on that one for quite a bit. Number 3 is tech innovations. Anything is kind of new that we've noticed, anything that we've seen come on the scene recently for 2025. We're going to be looking at tech innovations. Number 4 is cloud winners and losers. So who's actually winning in the cloud technology and who's actually losing? It's going to be an interesting one to compare those, mine with Paul's there. And tech updates and interesting solutions. So really not necessarily new stuff. That's the 5th one. But kind of updates or something new that's kind of, augmenting or adding something interesting to something that's already maybe exists. Again, Sarah will be seeing what your input on that will be. Number 6 is the Gen AI runaway successes. So any new technologies or models or solutions that have appeared sort of in the last 12 months are essentially kind of our clear winners or runaway successes of 2025. Now, we've added a bonus topic for this year. We thought we'll make it a bit more interesting. Number 7 is encounter of the year. Now, this could be the instruction that I gave to my guests was any event that you attended, any person that you met, any restaurant that you went to and discovered, or whatever else. So kind of a really slightly more open topic on this particular category. Okay, so that is our 7 categories. But before we kick off on these, here is a quick channel message for you. Did you know that 80% of you watching right now aren't subscribed yet to this channel? Come on, guys, we can do better, surely. So please hit subscribe and the notification bell. It costs nothing, but it really helps me to keep making more videos for you. All right, back to the therapy session. Okay, so our first category is the mergers and acquisitions. I'll let Sarah maybe start with this one. What was kind of maybe something that caught your eye in terms of M&A this year?
Yeah, I think it was even the one that you sent me yesterday was the Confluent acquisition, or at least the announcement for acquisition by IBM. I listened in now for about a year on some of the investor calls and the earnings calls for IBM. And it's really interesting to see them shift their strategy in terms of having lots of little, hopefully profitable companies, things like the Weather Channel, to something that's much more targeted towards, it feels like it's like hybrid cloud, which would interestingly bring them to one of the few companies that do like a legit hybrid cloud setup. Now, how feasible it's going to be, if they're going to pull it off, is another question, but it's really interesting to watch them kind of do the rounds of, okay, last year was HashiCorp. This year we're looking at Confluent. I know that there's some more interaction this year also between Red Hat and IBM. So I'm really interested to see kind of where that space goes and what they're planning on doing in the longer term with that.
Okay, and a quick question for you. So did the HashiCorp thing actually complete this year, or was it completed last year? Do you remember?
It completed in March, I believe. So
of this year?
Of this year.
Okay, right.
The intent for acquisition was declared a year ago, so 2024, and then the time it takes to get all of that through the SEC and all of the regulatory bodies is usually about a year.
Okay, cool. All right, Paul, what was your what caught your eye this year?
Well, I'm going to first a general comment. One of the things I found interesting about the acquisitions that we're looking at was quite often when you do this, it's about scale. People are trying to get scale, and you get a mix of scale or scope. This year is very much about companies broadening or changing the scope of what they do. So, everyone I looked at, I thought, this is not about building scale. This is about building broader capability. So I mean, the Confluent one was classic in that. So the sense of Salesforce buying Informatica to give them the sort of data capabilities, or the other one that intrigued me. Well, there was 2 others that intrigued me. One was Qualcomm's acquisition of a London-based chip designer called Alphawave. And actually what they're talking about is almost getting back into CPU chip production. And they wanted a designer, which is an interesting move, you know. And again, you can say, why the heck are they doing that when everybody's going down GPUs and other routes? So we'll wait to see where that one heads to. But clearly, I think, you know, people forget that CPUs still need to go to be around, and Intel's not exactly covering itself in glory at the moment. So I think that was an interesting one. And the other one for me, which was into the sort of systems integrator space, was Capgemini's buying WNS, which is a sort of agentic AI operation. And you know, it's one of the things I think if we're looking forward into 2026, is companies trying to gear themselves up to do that properly. And I know you're on my favorite influencer, not has had a pop at the systems integrators about their agentic AI platforms. So it'll be interesting to see where that one goes. So yeah, but it's very much a year of God, it's moved so fast. I need to buy somebody to improve my scope and capability.
Yeah, I think you're dead on with that too. The other one I thought was interesting was the Palo Alto Network's intent to acquire for CyberArk.
Yeah.
Which I think also, to your point, opens that scope as well. And hopefully, you know, looking at how Palo Alto usually operates, what kind of platform in that space can they then create to build that?
Interesting. So Paul, sticking to Intel, because you mentioned them for a minute. So in that way that you described it, you know, this year being kind of the scale type of acquisition, not the broadening.
No, the other way around.
The other way around. The scope. The scope, right. So broadening the scope. So in Intel terms, is that the tick or the tock a year? Which one is it? Because everything seems to kind of fall into the TikTok year. Even Gen AI kind of activities have been like that this year.
Like an uptick or a down top.
Yeah, so I think the tick is the year where they improve on the current architecture, and I think the tock is the new architecture that they bring in. So like an improvement on the current architecture is the, you know, extra cache, another layer of cache or something, but actually the architecture is the one that they announced last year. So what would it put it? I think it will put it into a TOC year, wouldn't it?
It's a TOC year, yeah.
Yeah, it's a TOC year
in that
for
analogy,
acquisitions.
it's a TOC year.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Now, the other thing that you guys need to remember is it's Confluent that they've acquired, not Confluence. So Confluent is the Kafka guys, not Confluence.
Are you mocking my accent?
That's what I'm hearing. It's my. I probably.
I apologize. I will enunciate better as I speak here.
probably the ear test or something of some kind. But yeah, so it's Confluent, not Confluence. So actually, for our dear audience as well, just be aware of that. So Confluent is the Kafka guys, Kafkaesque. I always want to say that. Here we go. So Kafkaesque, sort of the Kafka guys do the kind of, you know, the event and data streaming kind of platforms. Confluent, I think, offer a lot of stuff around that. And then the other one is Confluence, which is the Jira guys, I believe. At least that's their claim to fame. I don't know anything else about Confluence. I think one of them. This is now my
Atlassian.
You're digging a bigger and bigger hole here.
Yeah. So you can beat me up over the head with this one, because one of them invited me to their exec dinner this year, and I turned them down, and I can't remember which one.
Wait, and you're taking a pop at us for our enunciation?
I can't remember who it was. So, but thank you, whoever it was who yeah. So yeah, sorry about that. Atlassian, Confluent. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so HashiCorp finished this year. Now, the one that Paul, you and I and David actually missed out on last year, on the last year's episode, was IBM's acquisition of KubeCost. So that went right under our radar. Completely missed that one. But that was 2024. I just thought kind of a quick mention on that. But again, an interesting one that IBM did in 2024. Now, these acquisitions by IBM, are they actually IBM's open question for you guys? Are they IBM acquisitions, or are they Red Hat, in reverse acquisitions?
No,
What do you guys think?
these are IBM acquisitions. They're sitting under software group and are operating as an IBM company, whereas Red Hat still maintains a fair amount of independence.
Right. Okay.
I think, IBM's trying to pull them a little bit closer.
Yeah.
But they seem to be standing their ground.
Okay. So because I've always looked at the Red Hat and IBM acquisition as a reverse and acquisition reverse. Really Red Hat buying IBM, which is a bit ironic, but there you go. Anyway, okay, all right. So that's the mergers and acquisition. Look, I'm sure there's like a ton of those out there still. There's a lot more out there. I did a quick search earlier, spoke to Copilot, and gave me a whole bunch of other ones as well. But we'll stop there and move on to the next category. Now, for you guys, you let us know what you think were the interesting M&As for this year. But yeah, some interesting ones there in that category. Now, probably the biggest category, second category, which is the major cloud outages. Paul, I will let you start on this one.
Well, as you say, there's been plenty of outages, but the two that stand out clearly are AWS's sort of eastern US region and all the problems we had there, and clearly Cloudflare, which, having had an outage earlier in the year, went and did it again later in the year. So maybe they ought to get the top prize for two major outages in the year. I mean, we've talked about the challenges from these outages, and it sort of exposed the fact that an awful lot of people who use the cloud have not thought properly, and we've talked about this difference between resilience and high availability, and they've sort of been fed the line that you can have you don't have to have completely different regions. It's all going to be easy within a region if you just separate it out. I think it was, you and I know, and I'm sure, Sarah, you're in the same place. These outages will continue to happen because you've got this huge, complex environment, and there are going to be problems, mostly human oriented. It's usually updates that do it. But again, I think it's this sort of wake-up call for enterprises to say, get real, guys. You think it's just everything is in the cloud is going to be handled really well. And I think an awful lot of, the biggest enterprises tend to know what they're doing, but an awful lot of people out there that I talk to have sort of handed off, responsibility and maybe even accountability for the availability of the applications they run for their stakeholders. It's always, it's in the cloud, it's fine. No, that's why we put it there, because it's darn sight easier than trying to do building availability and high availability within our own data centers. And I think that's the biggest thing for me. We can you can look at the reasons it went down, and actually you have to say AWS did bring it back fairly quickly, given all the knock-on effects. That was the other thing. It was the knock-on effects of that link between the load balancers and DynamoDB and everything that just started to pull it apart. So again, the other thing for me coming out of that was the interrelationship of services. I'm going to call them applications, but the service interactions going on in the cloud is so complex these days that the knock-on effect is amazing. And the one thing, just amusing, this is light-hearted, when Cloudflare went down for the second time just recently, I thought I'd do it because everybody was saying, I think what's going on? Something's gone wrong. I went to a site called Down Detector, only to get a server 500 error message saying Cloudflare. I thought, how ironic is that? The one that looks, it was intriguing. But no, these are going to happen. I think it's just any business person who has an IT director, call them what you will, who's put their systems into the cloud and has not thought about high availability. And not thought how much they rely on these systems these days, probably has had a wake-up call.
Yeah.
I did.
I was going to say something much ruder.
Yeah. Sarah.
Well, so I agree and I disagree to a certain extent because having been now in a fair number of very large organizations, that complexity and challenge still exists within the organization itself. So then it's also a question of where is that viability and probability of, can AWS do it better than my team? Is that where I get the most bang for my buck? If I'm focusing on high availability and all of these things that I know that realistically speaking, mostly they do a pretty good job with, and they have the real experts, whereas I can't pay the same tier as AWS can. So realistically speaking, what I have in terms of talent is either going to move on relatively quickly or, is just not at that same level. But, are they, what is the trade-off, I guess? And that's a decision that, organizations are going to have to face and say, realistically speaking, I have X amount of downtime. AWS has had X amount of downtime. Where do I put my eggs? How do I balance that? I don't want to put them all in one basket. No, but like if Cloudflare goes down and the rest of the world is down because they're using AWS and I'm relying on a service that's reliant on AWS, I'm still going to be affected by that anyways. So I think it's a much more complex problem than we give it credit for. And just the macro economics of some of these tech giants now, they're insane.
The question I always come up with is how good is risk management within most organizations, and actually being able to understand, what's a sort of really critical event that could take the business down and how often is that going to happen versus, oh my goodness me, another glitch in the system, and we can live with that. And yeah, I'll point the finger more at public sector than at commercial enterprises. They tend to be in the I'll fix all the little issues because it looks good on the risk register rather than going, oh, how do I mitigate against the one absolute disaster that's only going to happen once every 10 years, and they ignore that and do, hey, I've fixed I've mitigated all these issues that really weren't going to be much of a problem. And I think that's still part of a problem in many organizations, as I say, public sector particularly.
Yeah. I think there's also because it is so difficult to quantify the value of any of these supporting infrastructure, the plumbing, everything that keeps applications up and the lights on, it makes it really difficult to create a business case that you can go to a CFO, a CEO, a risk person and say, if this happens, it's going to cost you X amount and it is going to reduce your overhead by X amount and it's going to cost you skills and it's going to cost you people and it's going to cost you reputation. Like, to quantify all of that to a place where you can realistically make that argument to a CEO or a CFO, it's almost impossible. And I think it's going to take looking at the problem a little bit differently. And especially the more we get into AI and the more we get into taking that abstraction layer one level higher, the more we're going to need to look at, okay, how do we change how we view the economics of abstraction and how do we determine what that sweet spot is for each individual business to say, okay, we only need X amount of abstraction because more than that's going to cause brutality and is going to cause us to have a decrease in our net profits. But if we don't do this level here, there's too much toil, there's too much turnover, and all of the knockdown effects that, we know from working in the industry that are there are going to continue as well. And I think that's only going to compound the more we get into AI and using AI in these abstraction layers as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's probably a huge amount to be probably said there. If you guys are actually interested in the AWS outage, Paul and I covered it extensively in our October episode of Class State of Play, so go and check that out. We talked about risk management, I think, in that one. I think, Sarah, you kind of really hit a lot of the points that we actually discussed in that episode as well, in terms of, you know, kind of the costs of kind of doing all of that sort of thing, things like high availability and so on. I think the thing that annoyed me really about, and again, we discussed this in the October episode, was the misuse of the terms, the resilience term and the sort of high availability term. Those are completely different things, but that was important I think to point that out, and we did do that. Obviously, Microsoft had its own outage as well, so we're not going to kind of just pick on AWS here. It'll be a bit fair, I think. Spread the
love.
Spread the love, spread the slagging off a little bit more to Microsoft. And Cloudflare managed to do it twice in 2 weeks, which was, I think they just kind of really wanted to beat everybody else at getting, you know, the outage of the year, Debbie Downer Award of the year, whatever you want to call it, I guess. The interesting report that I picked up from our dear BBC, Auntie Beeb, was when they were talking about the AWS outage, they were talking to teenagers. They were talking to people, well, teenagers on the streets and social, because also social media sites went down. So things like Snapchat, Roblox, and Fortnite were all down as well, thanks to the AWS outage. So clearly, the BBC's got their sort of priorities right as to which one's kind of more critical. Again, we mentioned Lloyd's and Halifax, I think, Paul, that they were actually affected as well, which kind of questioned why Halifax and Lloyd's is kind of going all the way out to East 1 and coming back in again for their web services. A little bit strange.
I mean, it's just whether that was a sort of throwback. If you go back 7 or 8 years and you looked at the routing algorithms of the 3 major cloud providers, AWS was the odd one out in the sense that it routed an awful lot of its stuff through the States. And my thanks to Thousand Eyes for pointing that out to me some years ago. But they have done a lot of work in the last few years to make to cut out some of those long loops back through and backwards and forwards across the east and west coast of the States, which is what they were doing. So I don't know where we're at now with that.
Talking of Thousand Eyes, they actually did an extensive. Thousand Eyes is owned by Cisco. They're kind of in the cloud network management space. Paul and I really fans of that space, including likes of Aviatrix as well. But they did a report on the AWS outage. So again, we'll include the details of that in the description of the video. Now, obviously, we can't talk about data center outages because nobody talks about those anymore. So there you go. Anyway, let's move on quickly move on to the next category. Hey, if you are enjoying the content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That would really help me out. Thank you. So category 3 is the tech innovations. Now, I'm going to start this one for a change. I think for me, the main thing that really has come through, it's kind of one has facilitated the other, but it's really the AI agents. Sort of talking and sort of talking point. Now not going to go into kind of how mature that is and stuff like that, and maybe touch on it a little bit, but the catalyst for that has really been Anthropic's model context protocol, or MCP. Now there's been lots of other sort of protocols that have come out since, from Google, IBM, and various other ones. I think some of them have merged. IBM has merged theirs with Google, I believe, recently. So the ACP, I think it's called, the A2A protocols. But really, thanks to the MCP, Anthropic's MCP protocol, that's kind of allowed this ability to interact and integrate with new data sources for AI agents a lot more easily. That space for me is still immature. I don't think anybody's even got an AI agent replying to out of office messages right now on their system. I don't think anybody can trust it to even go that far. Certainly lots of capability for SLMs to be those kind of AI agents and interact with that. Again, we'll provide a little bit more details on kind of what AI agents are, what do they do, and certainly nowhere near agentic AI, which the market's kind of hyped up quite a lot. But Sarah, I'll let you kind of come in as well.
I mean, I think you're right. In terms of innovation, there's definitely been some. It feels like right now with AI and LLMs, agentic AI, MCP, it feels like we're using the world as a giant innovation lab to a certain extent. So this, the report out from MIT where they're saying that 95% of AI in enterprises is failing. I think initially I was like, oh, that's a lot, but then when you kind of start to think about it, and you go, well, if I take an innovation lab and I say for a really good innovation lab who knows exactly what they're doing, what 7 to 10% of these projects succeed. So then you look at the 95% or the 5% that succeed and you start going, well, actually that's not too bad considering that we're looking at global innovation. Um, One thing that I just came across by happenstance was something called Illuma Cloud, and they're looking at separating CPU and GPU based off of logical workloads and then using that to distribute on a higher level and using distributed compute to do that. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Right now, they're heavily focused in sort of the infographic space and animation. But I think the goal is to use all of this unused compute that exists globally, and especially as things become more commoditized and compute becomes a lot more commoditized, to start using this co-location to be able to leverage some of that to bring down even further the price of CPU and GPU.
Interesting. So just a point on the MIT report. There's actually a counter report to that from somebody called Wharton Research,
Interesting.
which
Okay.
actually
I've
says,
not seen this one.
no, nothing's failing. Pretty much everything's working, and we're kind of 80% success rate and so on. And
Okay.
somebody actually did point that out, the Wharton research report, but also the fact that it was actually sort of counter to the MIT report.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah.
I'll check it out.
Yeah, we'll drop everything in the
Lies
description.
and statistics, isn't it? It's,
Yeah. Paul, what's your take?
Well, it's difficult because there's so much, stuff coming at us that's new. But the thing that I thought I'd bring up was one that's affected me particularly, but it has a wider implication. I think this is the instant translation capabilities that we're now getting on the internet. If you go back even 2 or 3 years, you try to get a translation, a Google translation of something that you want to see, and if you like, it didn't pick up on the idiosyncrasies of different languages, and therefore it was very, sometimes to the point where you were getting a completely different meaning because it hadn't picked up on the idiosyncrasies. I had a situation where I had to deal with a lost parcel in Italy, and my Italian's not very good. French, yes, fine, bit of German, but Italian, no. And the Italians tend, like the Brits, not to be good at different languages. And actually having that almost instant capability. And I did have to say to the person at the other end, does what you've now read make sense? And she came back and said, yeah, absolutely. So we had this weird sort of conversation going on where, you quickly said something, you're allowing the system to translate it and going, all right. And so it was a little disjointed, but it was fascinating to watch. And for the EU, I think that could be a game changer, because one of the problems, is that technology is very English language oriented. And, you sometimes feel that countries are missing out in Europe because of that. They're all having to learn English. And I think from an EU perspective, there ought to be something they're getting behind, because it's I think that could actually help sort of level the playing field a little bit and bring a lot more, innovative technologies from countries whose find English difficult to get their heads around.
So you weren't asking for the usual bar or pizza place then, while in Italy?
No,
the translation.
No, I was struggling with Italian.
A missing parcel.
Where the bloody hell my parcel had gone to.
Fantastic.
Oh,
Excellent.
goodness.
Okay. So Yeah, I mean, I think you know I think this kind of I think we're in the Gen AI space. We've certainly seen a lot of sort of innovation. I've seen a lot more around sort of the models. You know, going back to that sort of Intel TikTok sort of analogy. Um, there's a lot of interest there. The one that I've seen glimpses of, not there yet, and I'm advocating a lot for this, is an AI agents registry, a registry server system app, whatever you want to call it, that registers all AI agents that are going to run in your environment, whatever that environment is, you know, from your phone all the way to sort of corporate, you know, sort of environments, so that you can't really, if you're an AI agent that's kind of just dropped in via some rogue whatever or some phishing scam or something, you can't just run amok in that environment. You will be allowed to do zero in that environment unless you are, you know, part of the AI registry, and the AI registry recognizes you as a valid agent with the right tokens and, you know, security credentials and so on.
It feels like temporal may be moving in that direction a little bit, because you know you do have to give them a very clear schema of where they're going, what they're doing. Um, so I think for them, and especially you know they have their open source, but then they also have their cloud offering as well.
Mm.
So I'd be interested to see if that becomes part of their broader opening or offering over time. Because I think it would be super easy for them to do.
Yeah, I saw something. I think, and I think Paul and I, you mentioned it in the, you know, I mentioned it in the November episode of Class Safe Play. I think it was GitLab I mentioned. I was at their Epic conference a few weeks ago, and they mentioned, I think, something along these lines. But I mean, Sarah, you and I are used to in cloud natives, and I know Paul knows as well, that there's a so-called service registry. So why can't we have an AI agents registry in the same way as well? I think we need that in order for that code, that AI agent code, to actually execute within our environments, you know, in a legitimate way.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's hard to register something when you're still learning what the behavior is. And so I think right now the focus globally is just on what can this thing do? How can we use it? How can we leverage it? And then that governance side of things tends to be a little bit of an afterthought or something that's thought of from a regulatory or legislative perspective. And one of the things that I would love to see change, and maybe I'll see it in my lifetime, I'm highly skeptical, but is how does legislation and regulation get ahead of some of these things in a way
Yeah.
that's not going to hamper the innovation? Because certainly from a European perspective, we can't continue to just shut everything down systematically. Even as somebody who's just building my own thing right now, it's so much easier for me to register it in the US and have it run out of the US. I have better VC access. I have just better valuation. Um, so for me, there's no business reason to keep it in Europe. Also, the regulation's higher. So I think from a European perspective specifically, we really need to start looking at how do we make this easier and how do we do things like agent registry, even if we don't know what the behavior is up front or that's still a work in progress, how do we keep track of all of these things so that they don't get lost in the ether? And I think it's also quite important if you're running agents who have access to things and it's polymorphic code and can change over time. If you lose that agent and it just goes rogue and starts doing some kind of crazy things, you know, there could be some decent Cloudflare outages.
It'll make the current outages look like a picnic or something, right?
Yeah, and good luck trying to undo that too,
Yeah.
because you have no trace of what it should have been doing to begin with.
Gotta send out some agents to stop the agent, kind of thing. Propagate
Remind
that.
me of Dr. Seuss,
Yeah.
the watcher who watches the watcher.
Brilliant. Okay. All right. So shall we move on to the next one, guys? Which was this one? This was the fourth category, right? So cloud winners and losers. Now, I'm just going to drop a hint, and then I'll let you, maybe Sarah, come back, and then Paul. My cloud winners and losers are all about the data center or data centers. That's just a clue for you, but we'll see what I mean later on. Sarah, go ahead.
Um,
Cloud winners and losers.
I still have my eye on OVH. I know they had a little bit of a catastrophe a few years ago. But from a European sovereignty perspective, innovation, the way that they build their data centers is just crazy smart and does not tie them to the same type of infrastructure challenges that you see from like the data centers at AWS and Azure. Um, Definitely one that I'm keeping my eye on. And they just seem to keep slowly but surely kind of eating away a little bit. Um, Losers, and it kills me because from a cultural perspective, I love Microsoft. I think everyone I've ever worked with at Microsoft, really great on the collaboration front. From a technology front, though, I'm I'm kind of disappointed. It's not intuitive. It's a little bit challenging. There's a big difference in um their AI model versus even the open AI model. Um, so I'm hopeful. I really want to be hopeful, but I find them more challenging to use than the other clouds and less developer friendly.
Hmm. I have to say, Gartner didn't look favorably at any of these so-called neo clouds or alternative cloud providers, as I call them, the ACPs. I was at their Gartner's recent IOCS conference, which is the I won't bother. Just look up the just look it up.
Yeah,
I won't
I
bother with the
spoke at
name.
it last year,
But yeah,
but
yeah.
Gartner, for all things kind of mainstream enterprise ready, um, their analysts, very, 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 very capable, smart people. Um, but I don't think the name of the game is straightforward enterprise ready for everyone anymore. And if we need to see things start shifting, I think the only way to do that is to challenge it. So,
Okay, that's something we can maybe pick up on another talk. Paul.
Well, Sarah, I'm absolutely delighted you mentioned OVH Cloud because I've been following them for a number of years now. And the interesting, and I agree with everything you just said about them. And I think quite interestingly, Octave Klaber has taken the reins again at the head of the
oh,
organization.
has
Yes, it happened in the
ah.
last few months because I thought they were getting a little sort of oh, I suppose they were going down a very much more enterprise-oriented
Mhm.
route that was, but from a managerial perspective,
Mm.
they were bringing in people who were, not necessarily what I would call cloud native,
Mm.
and Octave's approach is so off the wall. And if you've ever been to Roubaix and seen the innovation lab there, and I don't know whether his father is still working in it, but he's the nearest thing to Doc Brown in
Mm.
Back to the Future I've ever seen. And they're brilliant. So from that point of view, I was wonderful when you said OVH Cloud. So I think that's great. I mean, I'm going to take a slightly different approach, and I'm going to do a winner and a loser all in one, and it's Oracle and IBM. And it's and
That's an interesting one. Do
if
tell
we're
us more.
talking cloud, and I'm not sure this is, we've talked about how genuine the cloud capabilities Oracle are, and I think actually from a technology point of view, they've been rather smarter than IBM in terms of pure public cloud and the way they've done that. And so, and Larry Ellison's ability to sort of, insert himself into the AI ring of, ring of investment that's going on, along with, I think, Oracle AI 12, as a database. I think, they've certainly positioned themselves well. Whether that lasts, whether it's a long-term thing or whether they will, they'll rise like some sort of one phoenix from the ashes and then crash and burn again. I don't know. But Sarah, you mentioned IBM and hybrid cloud. To me, IBM decided or appeared to decide a few years ago that they really weren't going to compete in public cloud and that they were going to double down on their enterprise.
Mhm.
And their enterprise customers. And I think they've struggled to deal with all the acquisitions and to bring them in and to make a coherent. I mean, we tried to do for IBM what the CNCF did with their sort of cloud model.
Mm-hmm.
And it became really difficult to get to grips with what IBM were doing. There were so many different bits that weren't connected. And I think that's the problem. And so, yeah, IBM are very much an enterprise systems integrator, services organization.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by your thing that they do genuine hybrid cloud. I could almost feel Richard flinching at the the idea. But so to me, if you're talking cloud, and particularly what I call cloud native environment that we tend to talk about, Oracle's made some interesting moves that certainly in the short term has boosted them up into the race, and IBM has clearly sort of drawn away from that. So you call it losers on that scale, which is a bit hard on a company of the size of IBM, but there you go.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. So yeah, let me just come back on a couple of the points and then I'll mention mine. So I think Paul, the sort of the differences between IBM and Oracle, you're right in regards to that. And again, guys, if you want to look at the sort of the Oracle stuff, we covered that again in the October episode, which I think what do we call it? The fall and rise of Oracle. So that was in the October episode. Go and check that out. Yeah, I agree also in terms of IBM's sort of cloud economics, as I would call them, acquisitions. So that space seems to be very muddled. You've got Turbonomic, Apptio, KubeCost. IBM actually presented to us recently at work, and they just completely left out KubeCost. And my first question to them was, "Where's KubeCost in this big chart that you were showing us?" So yeah, that was interesting. Now, just going on to the ones that I wanted to point out. So I said my category or my winners and losers were in the data center space. So in the winners, I think space for me is actually data center builders that are the winners for this year, because they're the ones who are going to be building and already started building all these what I would call AI scale data centers, for the for the Gen AI workloads of the future. So, for example, Crusoe, which is a complete unknown to me until we bumped into them when Stargate was mentioned earlier this year. So they're actually building all the stuff out in Texas. What was the name of the town again, Paul? I can't remember. But there's all the stuff that they're building out for Stargate, the project Stargate. It's all been done by this company called Crusoe, and they are data center builders like many others are. So that would be kind of the winners, I think, for me in this particular category. I think the losers for me are the traditional data center vendors, so the Dells, HPEs, and Lenovo's of the world. A further nail in the coffin was actually provided to me by Paul recently, which I did see in the AWS reInvent 2025. I think it was actually in Matt Garman's, who's the CEO of AWS, in his keynote speech, where he talked about the AWS AI factories. So now you can wheel in a whole factory, kind of a container-sized, rack-sized, whatever, maybe several racks worth of the AI factory, and run essentially all the services that you need for AI and normal AWS stuff as a self-contained, sovereign, private environment within your own data center. So that, I think, kills all of the, a million bill of materials and parts and stuff I had to order from Lenovo and get them or my partner to assemble it, and all the GPUs and the DOAs you have to deal with and various other things, which I have extensive experience with, by the way, having worked for both IBM and Lenovo in the past and done field engineering. So I think they're, no matter what they seem to be doing in terms of, gear shifting, they're not really succeeding in this sort of AI space, this brave new world of sort of AI scale capability. They're certainly not the ones that AWS and others go to when it comes to buying server systems, and they can't seem to be able to kind of integrate things very well as well, as we've seen from this reInvent announcement as well.
Yeah, the interesting thing for me is it's sort of output on it's outposts on steroids. It's sort of in my marketing terms, they finally understood how to put together a whole offer.
Yes.
Rather than just a series of component parts. The trouble with outposts was you still needed to build stuff, and this does seem to be, and I don't see the likes of Dell and Lenovo having the same sort of mentality and mindset that they need to actually build out a whole product solution, a whole offer to a customer. That means you don't do all that build yourself. I just don't see them there at the moment.
Well, it's things like I think the greatest strength that the public cloud providers have is that sort of PaaS layer. It's the offering of those ready-made, ready-to-go services, so you can focus on the things that are important to your business, building your business app, and not worry about IAM and DevOps platform and storage and data management, all that kind of. It's all there. If you want to really use that, go ahead and use it. And some people might argue that's kind of vendor lock and whatever. Yeah, but you're kind of locked in with vendors if you buy HPE servers, for example, and that's why most enterprises have a dual sourcing sort of policy when it comes to data center service. And again, I speak from experience on that. When I was at IBM, most people had Compaq or HPE or Dell or something, as well. So I think that's kind of all, definitely an important part of how this kind of space really is working for them, and they just don't seem to be really getting, any particular progress, that they're making to kind of, remain relevant in this space. Hey, if you are enjoying the content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That would really help me out. Thank you. Moving on to category 5 before we open another can of worms. Tech updates, interesting solutions. So this was kind of really looking at anything that's kind of innovative or improving on existing stuff. I will just drop in something in here very quickly, which for me, I think the most one that we've been talking about in sort of the AI space has been AI code generation. So we've seen the rise of things like N8N, Cursor, Replit, and various other ones as well. This has kind of really caused a sheer panic, I think, in the DevOps and cloud architecture and platform engineering space. Lots of people have kind of come out against this. Even had people like Dave Farley out protesting as well. He's going to be holding up a placard soon and in front of the Houses of Parliament or something. So if anybody doesn't know who Dave Farley is, I won't bother with all the details. I don't really necessarily agree with kind of his views, but he's the so-called godfather of or father of DevOps or whatever. Seems to be quite self-appointed and self-confessed hater of DevOps and a lot of his posts as well. So he actually doesn't even like the term DevOps itself. But he's moaned about it. Various other people have done that as well. Sort of talking about sort of AI code gen being a disaster really for doing code and generating code in the future. But anyway, I'll let you guys go in. That was the kind of the improvement one that I picked up on. Might come in a little bit more later.
You're not going to point at one of us then, or shall I
just come in? Just come in.
Just jump in. For me, I mean, it's around what's broadly called the observability space. I fell out of love with observability probably at the end of last year and into this year. The term badly misused, and there was a particular company that I was, got very close to, and thought they were doing a really good job, and that was Big Panda in the AI ops space. But everybody got swallowed up in this term of observability, and as I say, I just sort of fell out of love and started looking at sort of other areas and missed what I think was quite a switch from Big Panda. I mean, I had known that they were playing early with LLMs and how would you get LLMs to help, with more predictive analytics and start, improving and moving it away from monitoring to far more predictive type environment. And they were being smothered in the sort of observability discussion. And I missed it completely. They've sort of really pivoted towards agentic AI ops with two real objectives in mind. One is to completely automate level one responses, and the second is to finally get LLMs or maybe it's SLMs. I don't know. I mean, but getting that generative AI to really start providing not just predictive analytics, but what's the fix? So and getting people into the mix. So not automating level 2 and level 3, but giving far better. And it struck me that we've talked about predictive analytics now for the best part of 7 or 8 years in the sort of IT operations management space, and it was a chimera. It just wasn't happening, and therefore, I'm going to be catching up with Big Panda. I've got a call with them next week, and I'm going to follow up in the new year, even though I'm sort of retired, because I think actually it could be game changing. And I think they really have got. They're very focused. I like the guys at Big Panda. They've really got their mind focused on it. As long as the rest of the flipping sector doesn't, hijack a term and turn it into something it isn't. And observability was obviously the nemesis of, I think, a lot of stuff going on within IT operations. We've talked about that, but so to me, that sort of Big Panda's sort of use of LLMs, they got in early. If they can make it work, and that's the big question, if they can make it work, I think it will be, quite a significant change. And at last, IT monitoring becomes something much more forward-looking and actually starts fixing stuff.
So anything for you, kind of any updates that you've seen, any interesting solutions, augmentation of existing stuff?
Yeah, I guess so. Temporal is something that I've recently started looking at, seeing what's kind of available in that space. How do you manage AI agents? What does it look like to actually run an MCP? I'm working with a very dense subset of data, so that makes it life a little easier for me. And then with temporal LangChain, again, being able to describe those schemas and move them forward. I have to say that over time, I've become a much bigger fan of the coding agents, and what they do to help you move faster is incredible. So for somebody like me who hadn't touched, code or done any like proper coding in a few years, what coding agents have been able to help me with is sitting back down. I can give it exactly the architecture I want. I can tell it what I want the user journey to feel like. And then I can give it, this is what I want my database to look like. And this is the pseudocode around it. Write it in X language. And it can execute that for me. So for somebody like me who hasn't coded a day in my life in Swift, for example, all of a sudden I can ship a native app with all of the other knowledge that I have. So it gives me a level on top of everything that I'm doing. So it makes it possible for people to ship code with less knowledge or less in-depth knowledge. Yes, that can lead you to trouble, but if you're trying to get to an MVP or just something that you need to get onto the market, I think there's certainly a place for that. I really think it's just another type of engineering, though. It's not, if you tell it to write code, yeah, it's going to write you just a mess of code. But if you engineer how you want it to write that code, it feels kind of comparable to what the Rubies and the Pythons of the world did when before we were looking at, punch cards, for example. So that's my soapbox.
And
Go
I,
ahead, Paul. Yeah.
yeah, no, I'm just interesting insight when you were talking, Sarah, about the way in which you sort of set it up and architected it. And the
Mm,
concern I've seen is that, as I say, too many people are sort of almost cutting out that really thoughtful first piece.
yeah.
And actually then, we go back to, I mean, I go back as far as, fourth generation languages back in the 80s, and we always used to know that if you didn't follow the right sort of architectural,
Hmm.
strategic, training, you just got systems faster that were so hard to run
Yeah.
and change. And I think one of the challenges is you're going to end up with code that becomes, unless you're careful, code that's going to become a sort of legacy overhang, and you
Hmm.
can't do much with it.
No, exactly. And I think the more context I have, so to get it to scaffold me just boilerplate,
Hmm.
super easy. Like but you don't need to know any context. But the more context the application has, the more careful I have to be about how I prompt it, what code I tell it like not to touch. So it doesn't at all mean that I don't know my code base. To the contrary, I have to almost know my code base better. But what it means is I don't have to take the time to punch out each individual letter or go through the linting errors or things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think I think this space is going to grow. The people, like I said, have sort of dead against it. I think it's just going to be improving. It's not necessarily production ready or that kind of stuff. Maybe a little bit of kind of snippets of code and so on, but certainly for prototyping, demos, and things like that, I think it seems to be very good. And also, the old adage of don't knock it until you try it. Don't kind of just look at it from the outside and then start building your fortress against it, sort of thing. Go and have a go. Actually try it yourself, because a lot of this stuff is open source, and I'm not an expert on N8N, but I've spoken to people who are prototyping production systems. They're actually building hardware software combinations that use N8N stuff, and they absolutely love it. They're kind of phenomenal. They might sort of come from a C++ or a Golang or something kind of background, or maybe even a Python background. And the amount of code that they're generating, which is good enough to get it into a product, good enough to get it into that sort of production sort of space, is they're very kind of positive on that. Not necessarily mission critical, but it can go into production, like I said, in certain areas, but not necessarily, like I said, yet for kind of mission critical stuff. Snippets of code, fine, but not necessarily the whole thing. But certainly for prototyping and things like that, very good. Now, just an extra point on this. I spoke to somebody from Langflow, which is IBM's now acquired, again, another acquisition, which we forgot to mention, DataStax. Apparently, the acquisition of DataStax was completed in May of this year by IBM. So Langflow is actually acquired by DataStax, and clearly now DataStax owned by IBM. So the guys from Langflow were at the AI for the Rest of Us conference. So again, check out the channel for interviews with Langflow, review of AI for the Rest of the conference, which I attended earlier this year. And they were talking, I mean, they did a demo, and I completely lost kind of what he was doing, because he was doing a demo as part of his presentation, and completely lost him halfway through. But he just kind of moves through the Langflow platform to build a very simple chatbot or whatever he was doing in the demo very quickly. So I sat down with them and spoke to the guy from Langflow. Very nice, really enjoyed the conversation. Lots of good stuff there. Talked to him about AI, agent registries and things like that as well. But yeah, a lot of stuff I think is happening in that. Let's not kind of knock it until we've tried it, I think is my sort of recommendation. But definitely the winner in this sort of tech update sort of category for me. Okay. Let's move on. And thank you for this. I think it was kind of interesting ones to pick on for this year. It's always not an easy one to do, but it's also quite good. Okay. Now, category 6, guys. Gen AI runaway successes. Sarah.
I mean, I'm ChatGPT for life. I'm not gonna lie. Don't know what to cook for dinner?
Whey!
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT.
Need to be more diplomatic in an email? ChatGPT.
ChatGPT.
um, no, yes, I do have to admit, N8N is another big one for me. I over the summer kind of went and hauled off into the mountains and locked myself away to just kind of play with some stuff that I haven't for several years now. And it's like what's an easy jumping off point that I can start understanding how all of this works on a bigger picture. And N8N is actually where I started. Really easy to use. Really, I think if you are somebody in leadership or an executive level who wants to understand how it comes together and what happens, what the impacts may be on like downstream systems, et cetera, it's a really great place to just kind of jump in. Doesn't take too much time, and helps you put together the picture for all of that. And then if you're somebody who's prototyping, fast, easy, can get it done. And even I think from a developer perspective, there's some interesting workflows that you can definitely leverage DevOpsy style if you want to.
Let's not go too deep into that one. That's another can of worms. Well, what was your
I
take?
love the way you did the DevOpsy style. I mean, it was great. Brilliant. Love it.
Paul.
I took a rather different approach because I looked at it and thought, I was looking to see where the use cases were. And I have to say, I was somewhat disappointed, and ChatGPT took a lot of persuading to give me anything other than very sort of high level sort of stuff. So I think an awful lot, so what I was hoping was that there would be some really good evidence around the 5 to 7% or whatever that's actually starting to run. Where was it? What's it so good? And we've got sort of snippets of information around, in certain financial services spaces, in healthcare, and even amongst legal drafting of documents for lawyers, all those sort of things. But nothing really grabbed and said, hey, there's everybody's just trying it out. So because otherwise, you're just talking, say, about OpenAI or ChatGPT or DeepSeek, although there was an awful lot of noise around DeepSeek. It seems to have gone very quiet.
Definitely.
DeepSeek, which was interesting. Maybe next year we'll pick up why that's the case. But no, I say from the point of view of, was there a runaway success, something that's going to point us to next year that says, this is the killer app, this is the killer use case that's going to take going to take Gen AI into the enterprise. And I didn't see it, to be honest. I have plenty of little opportunities spotting up around there, and I think they'll come. But I then ran out of time to come back and think, oh God, I'm not going to be able to say much positive on that front. Come back around the others, but I think you've done it for me, so that's fine.
You should have just asked ChatGPT.
Well, it came up with the big names that you've all come up with. It was like, oh,
it would probably said, well, it was me, of course, Paul. Who do you think is the runaway success?
Yes, I did wonder whether ChatGPT would do that. It didn't.
Yeah.
It was very good. It was very modest.
Modest about it. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so at least some of its alignment is working in terms of the modesty category anyway. So for me, I think it's kind of, it's associated with AI. I think the runaway success for this year has been NVIDIA, really. Their meteoric rise to the most valued company in the world. Capitalization, I think market cap was or is $4.5 trillion. I think they actually hit 5 trillion at some point and kind of just dropped a little bit since then. So I think they're around the 4.5, 4.6 market cap at the moment. Revenue, 187 billion for the year, 44 billion per quarter. That's up 69% year on year, apparently. And the shares are a cool $186 at the moment. So that's kind of where they are. So that was definitely the runaway success for this year. Obviously, they've been building that kind of momentum, maybe the last, 18 months, 2 years. I guess maybe since the early sort of 2024 when we all realized, oh my God, we're going to need loads of GPUs for this. So I think that was the time when everyone went, who's making GPUs? It's actually one company over there. It's called NVIDIA. those $800 million turnover, whatever they were at the time. Now, most valued company in the world. So I think that's definitely the runaway success for
I think as
2025.
some of the bottlenecks start to appear, it'll be interesting to watch companies like AMD. In fact, they bought ZT Systems, with some rack level expertise that gives them, a broader capability to match what NVIDIA are doing. And I think there'll be a level of oh God, everything going through NVIDIA, people will start to look at other spaces and ARM-based processors as well. So it'll be interesting to come and see what happens.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think Google's definitely shown that with their TPUs at least for the inference side.
Yeah.
The only issue I think that the others have is ecosystem. NVIDIA has a huge now ecosystem, and everybody's APIing and librarying and whatever else, and GPU splitting and virtualizing through their ecosystem and not somebody else's. And I think that's the thing about it, what
it's one
their
thing
sort of
that
position.
maybe could have mentioned generally about the growth of cloud, the growth of AI, is the difference between, let's say, an IBM and an Oracle that have always tended to use the word channel, and the likes of AWS and to a lesser extent Microsoft, who've used the term ecosystem and have played a very different game around that, that has completely blown the sort of channel models out the water in terms of the ability to scale. So I think interesting. We'll come back to that.
Indeed. Hey, if you are enjoying the content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That would really help me out. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on to our last bonus and fun category. So our encounter of the year. Sarah, I'll let you maybe kick us off on that.
For all of the other questions, this one is the most difficult.
Yeah. You can ask Copilot or ChatGPT about that one. That's why.
Okay, I guess two. One, I actually discovered Luxembourg, which is a very cool place. At least in terms of nature. So for somebody who lives on the mainland, it's not super far away. And for somebody who lives in a very flat land, like nice mountains, and it's just like it's super peaceful, super chill. Very pleasantly surprised by that. From a food perspective, there is a restaurant in Cork in Ireland called Paradiso, which is one of the few Michelin-starred vegetarian restaurants. Now, generally, I am somebody, I enjoy a piece of meat, but this place is amazing and like highly recommend if you ever find yourself in Cork.
Very good. Fantastic. Paul?
Well, I've just again, Sarah said something that warmed my heart. I mean, my wife's Irish, and we have a house in Northern Ireland, and so I've seen it flourish in the last 20 years, absolutely flourish. And so the food scene, I remember when we got married, and we went on a sort of our honeymoon, as a driving honeymoon around the south of Ireland. I think we nearly starved. But that was 1977, so a long time ago. So yeah, Northern Ireland, and there's a restaurant. It's a hotel and restaurant actually, which is unusual. Attire House in County Londonderry or Derry.
I have heard of this, weirdly.
It is.
Yeah.
It is stunning in terms of its food. It's not nouvelle cuisine in the sense, but just the way in which they, local produce and, well prepared. And it's Tiger Woods stayed there because when the Open was in Portrush. But it's in the middle of nowhere, and it's this fabulous old country house.
Oh, wow.
But the food is absolutely superb, and so yes, Ireland has really expanded. You get places like Ballymaloe and places like that they're doing that. So, sorry, I was a bit discursive there. I've got one, life affirming thing to talk about. Because it's been a difficult year in many ways, lots of things going on, difficulties. I'm not getting any younger, all those sort of things. And We had our first grandson just under 3 months ago.
Ah,
Congratulations!
And it was, you remember your first child and the impact that had. And I didn't think this was going to have the same impact. I have to say, every bit as much. The first time I got to hold him
ah.
was just, and I think, it's Christmas, life affirming, in a difficult world. That was a wonderful moment.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations for that. Definitely.
Love it.
That is lovely.
And what about you, Richard? You're not getting off the hook on
Oh,
this
no,
one.
no, 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 absolutely not. So just hitting back on the Irish thing. My ex-girlfriend was Irish. She lived in Limerick. So I used to actually going to Limerick at one point was like catching a bus for me. It was just very pretty much there every other weekend or every weekend if I could. And my memory of that sort of time was she took me to a place called Ballybunion Beach. Now, don't tell me which county or whatever that is in. I can't remember. But Ballybunion Beach. I'll find the Google Maps link for you guys. Ballybunion Beach. Really enjoyed that. Had a great time with her and her daughter. So that was fantastic. Now, my encounter of the year was actually meeting Kelsey Hightower. Not meeting him once, but actually twice this year. So I met him once at KubeCon in London back in April, and I can't remember who he was I think representing some companies. He was actually at one of the stands in the showcase area, in the exhibition area, but he'd lost his voice. So because he'd been talking a lot and whatever, and clearly doing lots of presentations and what have you. So the only thing I could do was I didn't want to disturb him, and he was kind of on the stand, and there was lots of people around, so I didn't really kind of want to, but I shook his hand, just said hello and everything, and then I said, "Would you like some of my lozenges?" So I actually gave him some of my lozenges. It was like, "Would you like some of my lozenges?" So I gave him all my lozenges. So that was my claim to fame in April at KubeCon London. I gave Kelsey Hightower my throat lozenges. So that was one thing. And then I was invited by Sivo actually to their Navigate event a few months ago. So again, thank you to Sivo for that. And he was actually there because he was actually he was their sort of guest of honor and special guest. So they did lots of kind of talks, and he did some presentations, whatever. Did a fireside chat with him and so on. But he was around, so I got to see him again, and he said, "Oh, I remember you." And I was like, "Yeah, I gave you my lozenges back at KubeCon London," and we got talking. And then I was invited also to Sivo's dinner, exec dinner that evening, and I sat next to Kelsey Hightower. So I had another real long conversation about, things like Kubernetes and simple trivial matters like Kubernetes and
Wait, does he know something about Kubernetes?
I think so. I think so. Did he not famous for that Diana Ross Coming demo a few years ago from KubeCon? But anyway, so I got to speak to him about it, and we talked a little bit more actually about careers. So he was obviously a distinguished engineer when he left Google. He's retired, I believe now, but he obviously does these kind of advocacies and what have you. So he's kind of pretty much a gun for hire. But we talked about careers and kind of how we sort of got to where we were. And an interesting conversation came out of that, which you guys might be seeing on the channel, hopefully very soon. I won't say anything more about that, but that's kind of the where the conversation went with Kelsey. Sarah, I'll give you a clue, but don't say anything now. You already did the first episode with me in this new category that's going to come out next year. So watch out for it in 2026, guys. You're going to see a lot more segments coming out on the channel. But anyway, that was my interesting encounter with lots of other stuff as well. But that was kind of the interesting one that I really enjoyed that conversation. We had wine was flowing, food was good, conversation around the table was fantastic, and I just got to chat to Kelsey Hightower for 2 or 3 hours at the table, which was really cool to do. And it was like I said, there's a lot more. Slightly more personal kind of conversation off this sort of tech. Once we got Kubernetes out of the way, of course, everything else was kind of career and and stuff like that, which was quite cool. So that's my one. Okay, All right, so I think we're there, guys. Have we kind of got everything off our chest? I think we have.
Covered quite a range.
We covered quite a range, and time is getting on, and I'm sure people watching this want to go and do something else. Maybe watch one of my other videos. Who knows? Anyway,
insert
okay.
shameless plug here.
Completely shameless plug, completely accidental. It wasn't intentional at all. But anyway, thank you both very much. Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate your time. Thank you,
Pleasure
Paul.
as always.
Really appreciate going through. It's been actually a fun one to do. Really enjoyed doing it. All the stuff that we've talked about and then some will be in the description of this video, so go and check out all the links and stuff like that. As we always do, Paul and I, we always bring the receipts, unlike some shills and LinkedIn influencers we could mention, but won't go there. We should have mentioned them in the Cloud Losers category, but anyway. Ooh, wow, meow.
Claws are out.
I do have to rein him back every now and again.
He does.
I can't imagine why, Paul.
Fantastic. Okay. We'd also love to hear from you guys. What were some of your choices in those categories, or indeed your own categories as well? That'd be really interesting. So please drop that in the comments. Please participate. If you are watching this, we'd really appreciate that. Please don't forget to support the channel in all the usual ways. May I wish you a very Merry Christmas. I hope you're enjoying the festive season, and we will see you next time. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to support me. You may also want to check out some of the other videos on this channel. Bye for now.